All right.
Okay, so uh, I'm very happy to welcome Mike from Kansas here with us. I met him in Vienna in the International Summit of Educators, and when he entered the room or the stage, when everybody just immediately felt this energy, and now we already has felt it again. So I am really very happy to give him the floor and talk about entrepreneurship and teaching, or about his experience, because I think that there is really much to share with us. So Mike, tell us about your work, about your ideas, and you participants. I am very happy that you joined us, and then you can keep giving the questions to Michael. I think that he will be happy about that.
Perfect.
So now, Michael.
Perfect. Well, good morning. Well, I guess for me it's morning, but for the rest of you, good evening. It's a really great pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much, Cornelia, for setting all of this up. We had a great time in Vienna a couple weeks ago talking about entrepreneurship and education. And I see this there's a chat box down in the corner. So I think if people have questions or if they want to jump in, feel free to. Or if I sometimes I realize I get excited talking about this and I speak very quickly. So if I'm going too fast or if you can't hear me, please feel free to shoot a message saying slow down or we can't understand you. But so by training, I am a researcher. So I've done my most recent book was on educational entrepreneurship. And so when I talk about educational entrepreneurship, I am talking about educators who are working to rethink how we deliver education. So it could be how schools are organized. It could be the types of tools that are used in schools. It could be innovative curriculum or new subjects matter that need to be taught. Or anybody who's rethinking some of the mechanics of education systems, how teachers are prepared, how schools are evaluated. So one of the things that I know many of you are interested in the teaching of entrepreneurship, sort of as a discipline, helping encourage your students to be entrepreneurs. I would argue that the best way to teach children to be entrepreneurs is to model that behavior yourself. So to be entrepreneurial, to think outside the box, to change the way that you do what you do, to try and show them what is possible and what is different. So, here in the States, there are a lot of really fascinating things that are happening right now in this sort of entrepreneurial field. School leaders and teachers are rethinking the way that schools are organized. So just to maybe give a kind of finer point on it, some examples. So there's a company that just started a couple years ago called Clever. Now, I don't know how many of you in your classrooms use online software. It might be online curriculum, it might be behavior management, it might be any way that you log into these programs. But many of you have probably experienced, if you have that, problems with getting students to log in, right? Every program has its own password. Everyone has its own, login process. Well, a group of educators and tech entrepreneurs figured out a really simple computer program that could help unify those. So you would have one login that would then log you into everything that's going on. You'd have one password. You would just have one sort of login. And in a very short period of time, now something like 20 or 30 million students are using their software. So the example that we have there is that it's solving clear, direct problems that either students or teachers have in new and innovative ways. So one of the things that I would encourage all of you to think about is, what are those issues? What are those problems that are showing up in your schools, in your school systems, and how can you solve them? Because in many ways, we have two different issues that we're talking about. we have an issue of policy, and we have an issue of practice. So when it comes to practice, those are the things that are actually going on in your school building. So the questions are, what are the issues that you're facing? What are the problems, and what can you do to solve them? Oftentimes we get overwhelmed and we see huge issues that are at play. And I know here in the United States, in Europe, all across the world, the issues can be different that we're trying to solve. Drilling down those very clear, not get overwhelmed by the big picture, thinking about those clear, direct things that you're trying to solve can be very helpful. And then on the policy side, working with your ministries of education, working with those organizations to create that space that's necessary for entrepreneurial educators to try and create those types of solutions. So what can you do to be more entrepreneurial? So the first thing that I would recommend for educators who want to be more entrepreneurial is to identify problems, right? What are the issues that are going on in your school and your community that need to be solved? And then B is to engage with your community, your fellow teachers, your students, parents, other people in the community, to try and think about what those solutions are. Then I think the key thing to do is to borrow from what we have from entrepreneurship, and that is, the word in English is iterate. So it is to attempt something, to test it, try it again, improve it, to fail, learn from it, and move forward. And that constant testing process, trying new things, learning from them, moving forward, can be really, really useful for teachers, and it models that behavior for students. So it teaches students to identify problems and to solve them. I'm thinking I've been speaking for a little bit now. I might take a pause. I see we have the chat window available and others. Does anyone maybe have any questions or responses to that? At least this sort of first 10 minutes that we've been talking about. Look, I can talk to you all evening if you'd like, but as much as possible, if we can try and sort of make this interactive. Like I said, I'm a researcher. I research entrepreneurship in education, entrepreneurial educators, people who are doing new and innovative things. As much as possible, if we want to sort of share things, that would be great. Looks like I see people typing. This is an encouraging sign.
Yes, I hope that they can ask questions. Yes.
Okay, great. Here's a question. Is there a special curriculum in the U.S. for entrepreneurship in primary education? And so it's an interesting question because it speaks a little bit about kind of decentralized nature of the American education system. So in America, each of our 50 states gets to create its own sort of set of standards, its own set of expectations, its own exams to measure that. So there isn't actually one system. However, in this decentralized system, and I see there's about secondary education as well. Great. In this system, there are actually providers. So Junior Achievement, which many of you may be familiar with, the European affiliates of that, is actually very involved in the United States. And so there is curriculum that is being developed. One of the things, though, and it's an issue that many of you are probably familiar with and run into, is that we have a lot of things that we expect out of schools and out of students. So making time in the school day, in the school week, in the month, and in the year to try and teach about entrepreneurship can be a challenge. There's a lot of stuff. We have a 180-day school year, and between science and history and mathematics and literature, all of those sorts of issues, there's a lot that we expect out of schools. So some schools do it differently than others, and really make it a priority. And some schools don't. So I wish there was one sort of unified answer that I could give you for that. But yes, there are attempts to teach entrepreneurship in American schools, but it's sort of in fits and in starts and in different places. Now, here's a great question. Maria, isn't entrepreneurship more about the attitude and not about the curriculum? So that is an outstanding question, because I think that, oh, look, we even have response. Look, you guys are talking with each other. This is wonderful. So I agree, it can be integrated in curriculum. I think ultimately it's about both. So entrepreneurship is about a mindset. It's about a way of looking at the world, solving problems in particular ways. But there are discrete skills that entrepreneurs need to be successful. Now, luckily, many of the skills that entrepreneurs need to be successful overlap with lots of other things that we need in life. So we know lots of things about entrepreneurs. They're really good at collaborating with other people, right? They work well with others. Now, it turns out, even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, being able to collaborate well and work well with one another is a good skill. You want to be able to do that. They're good communicators, right? So they have the ability to talk to other people, to learn from other people, to work with one another. Now, again, that's somewhat about an attitude, but it's also about a discrete set of skills that we need to teach. And look, and there's also successful entrepreneurs have strong skills in things like maths, right? So mathematical knowledge, if you want to run a business, you need to be able to sort of balance the books. And so that's an important piece of it. So I think it's both, right? So it's an attitude that we're working to cultivate in our students, but it's also a discrete set of skills that students need in order to be successful. And so, kind of pivoting back to what I had begun with, one of the things that you as an educator can do is model an entrepreneurial mindset for your students, right? So if you show them how you approach problems, that you want to solve issues that are in front of you, if you want to work to communicate well with others, collaborate with others, that type of stuff can help cultivate those attitudes within children. And successful entrepreneurs have generally had to learn these from someone that they've experienced. They all had someone that they looked up to. Maybe it was a business owner, maybe it was others, but that they can work with. Oh, I see a great comment that some students with discipline problems have been more entrepreneurial skills than academic students. I think that's a great point. Oftentimes, because of the way that we've chosen to organize our schools, the way that we choose to, test students and others, some of these children that don't fit into our kind of traditional box of what we expect from students can struggle in school. And lots of great entrepreneurs struggled in school. So it can be a really good opportunity. Talking about entrepreneurship can be a really positive experience for lots of students who may not excel in traditional subjects. So I think that there's a really good opportunity there. Entrepreneurial activities tend to be more active, right? The junior achievement curriculum that many of you may be familiar with encourage students to actually start small businesses. They encourage people to get out and do stuff and be active. So I think that is that students that maybe struggle in traditional schooling environments, maybe have discipline issues, is something they can really dig their hands into and get involved with. Okay, we had a question. So how do you measure this? I think that's another good question. And again, my recommendation would be sort of twofold. So one is there are skills, sort of as I said, there are skills that are necessary to be good entrepreneurs, right? So some of those communication skills, collaborative skills, and basic knowledge of things like mathematics and others. So it's possible, I think, to measure those things, right? So, in really traditional ways. I think you have the opportunity to do that. But you know, another piece of it that I think is important is um, entrepreneurship, teaching entrepreneurship gives you the opportunity to get kids involved in active performance tasks. So rather than having them sit down for an examination or other, you can actually have them do things actively. You know, that they can get themselves really involved in the process. It's more difficult to assess, I think, but can really be valuable. And insofar as, and I'm not sure about the schools where you all are coming from, this great group of people, and it's such a privilege to be joining all of you this evening, spread out, from all over the place. But, schools, at least in the United States, are trying to move towards more quote unquote authentic assessments that are more tied into actually demonstrating the ability to do something, as opposed to just kind of spitting knowledge back out that they learned. So I think entrepreneurship gives a really good opportunity to do that, to give people authentic performance tasks. Start a mini business. So figure out one of those problems to solve and do it. Create something, create a product, create an advertisement, create something so that it's a real thing that kids are doing. Get them involved, get them active, still some of these dispositions and the knowledge that they need. Looks like multiple attendees are typing. This is good. We've gotten a robust discussion going.
There was a question that in Italian schools it's a hard job to introduce into curriculum. So Anna wrote that she needs your suggestions how to implement entrepreneurship in her classes. So it's
yes. Well, I will tell you, to my Italian friends that are joining, you are not alone. That there are folks that are really, really more focused on theory than in practice. So as I sort of said earlier, look, I think you as an educator are in a tough position because there's the practice level, which is what you all are doing, and there is the policy level. So where those sort of rules and regulations are placed around on what you need to do. So, in that level, I know it's a hard thing to say, but I think it's important that you work with people that are involved in policy, whether it's set at your local level, whether it's your Ministry of Education, whether it's any of the organizations that are involved in this. I know in various countries, teachers' unions and others that are involved in the policymaking process, and really work with those people, convince them that this is something that is necessary and something that needs to change. Look, I'm not saying that is an overnight process or something that can be done quickly. It's definitely a challenge and an uphill battle. But working with people that are on the policy side, because the big thing when I think about fostering entrepreneurship at the policy level, what we're really doing is two things. And I think of the analogy of a gardener, right? So how does a gardener make a garden work? The first thing that they have to do is clear the area, right? They have to clear the brush away, they have to clear the trees away, and they have to make the soil ready for things to be planted. So that's the first sort of policy change that needs to take place. How can we clear out the rules, the regulations, the requirements that prevent entrepreneurial educators from solving that? And then the second piece of it is working on planting the seeds, right? So how is your community, how is your nation, how is your, depending on those of you that have sort of more state-based ideas, sort of more like the United States, more decentralized system, how are those people planting those different seeds so that they're able to blossom? Look, we're getting tons of questions, and this is great. I see one at the bottom here. Does general education have to learn from vocational education? Maybe mix them. I think this is true. See, many of your countries, so the United States has a really kind of interesting system when it comes to vocational education. I think by and large, we do a very, very poor job of preparing our students for sort of the non-academic, if that's what you want to call it. So we have schools that are generally organized around trying to get students into university. And for students who aren't interested in going to university or perhaps have a different skill set, we are not as good as at providing them with options. And as a result, I think you see the knock-on effects of that in our culture, in our economy, in our society. Well, I think that it's incredibly important to mix the ideas of vocational education, the ideas of entrepreneurship. All students have an opportunity to learn from each other with this in that respect. Because not only I think is it gooder, is it better for students in the short term, but I think over the long term, I think you see a much more positive thing. I see a great point here. We wrongly consider vocational less relevant than academic. I totally agree with that. Um, I think that we're bad about it in the United States, that we overly emphasize the academic track, and to everyone's detriment. I think that we underestimate the amount of technical knowledge that is necessary for the vocational trades. We do not do a good job of sort of emphasizing those things. Um, I think that we oftentimes, I think that it's just sort of what was said, that we emphasize the academic track to the detriment of the vocational track, and it's not a good way, not a good way to do it. I think it's really important to look at both of those tracks. And look, what are we fundamentally trying to do? We are trying to provide the environment where students can thrive, right? And we know that students come into our schools from a variety of different backgrounds, perhaps speaking different languages, having different values, different cultures, and we're trying to help them succeed. And so we've got to be open to the idea that there are different environments in which different students will thrive in, different values, different things that we need to work on. So can you give some practical tips to push this change? Sure, I'm happy to. So a couple practical things. So number one, I think if you're trying to push this change within the policy realm, so this is outside of your school, one of the things that I think can be most effective is to find examples, and I think you've got a great community of people here that could be a resource for this. You've got to find examples of other schools or other communities or other places that are doing some of these things well. And then you take those to the decision makers, to the policy makers, the Ministry of Education, to whoever you're dealing with, and say, we want more things like this here. It can be very difficult at times if you speak to people in very theoretical or very general terms. If you can have discrete, distinct, concrete things, this school operates 2 kilometers that way, we want something like this here, or just across the border, schools are doing this, we want to bring those things here. That can be a really powerful way to do it. So rather than appealing to some kind of abstract ideas, be very clear about, we call, in consulting world, they call them proof points, right? So this is proof somewhere that your idea works. So I think that that's important. And I think the second thing is to unite discussions of schools with broader discussions that are happening at the national level, at the EU level, or others. There has been a push in response to youth unemployment and others to promote entrepreneurship. But you've got to help people understand that entrepreneurship doesn't just emerge out of some vacuum, right? It's not magic. You sprinkle magic dust and suddenly entrepreneurs just show up. These are skills and things that need to be taught, and so I think it's important to explain that to people, that if you want more entrepreneurs, it's schools that are going to be help producing them. Oh, another great response. Anna says a project. I assume when you say PBL, project-based learning approach is the best way. I think that's a great idea. At least here in the United States, there was a documentary that was done recently. I think you can probably find it on YouTube or on Vimeo, called Most Likely to Succeed. And it is a case study of a school in Southern California called High Tech High. that is an entire school organized around project-based learning. That can be a really effective. Some people that are trying to promote entrepreneurship, promote project-based learning, have been hosting screenings of that movie for parents, for policymakers, for researchers, because it's really well done. You get to see the kids thriving in it. So as much as possible, I mean, that's one of those examples of a sort of concrete thing. Show people how project-based learning is working, what are the conditions under which it's being allowed to exist, how it's working, and say, listen, as long as we have X regulation, Y rules, Z policy, we're never going to be able to have schools like this. So we've got to start rolling those things back. And then look, I see networking is fundamental. I totally agree with that as well. Part of the thing that you need to do is you need to talk with teachers in other schools that are meeting with success, that are around entrepreneurship or others, and bring those back and use those people as a sort of testimony to what's going on, because people can get this idea about project-based learning or about entrepreneurship that's very vague and very, very general terms. But as much as possible, if you can find those concrete examples, where Cornelia and I met was at an event sponsored by Junior Achievement Europe. And one of the things that they did was they invited teachers in their network to come and present things that they do in their classrooms. And for me, it was a very powerful experience, because it wasn't something that was just being talked about in abstract. It was something that was really being done right in front of our eyes. And lots of students, or lots of, we were teachers and we were researchers in the room. We said, whoa, like this is absolutely something that can be done. So I see Maria Luisa says, yes, project-based can be a solution. Also flipped classrooms. Now, I assume many of you are probably familiar with this parlance of flipped classrooms. I think flipped classrooms are a really interesting idea. Again, this kind of comes back to, if we think about entrepreneurial educators are people who rethink the way we deliver education. And the flipped classroom is a perfect example of educational entrepreneurship. It's people saying, listen, the way, and I don't know, I assume, are most people sort of on this? Are you all familiar when I use the term flipped classroom? Is this a new idea for some people, or is this do people, maybe in the chat window you can let me know if you're familiar with this idea of a flipped classroom. But basically, the long and short of it is that you use a lot more technology to deliver some of the basic content when students are not in school. Then you focus a lot of your time in school on actually doing practice and working with one another. So I think that's another great example of doing that. It allows more time if you have that sort of content that's being taught outside of your classroom day. You can focus much more of our time, sort of what Francesca said right there, exactly. Students can work with teachers, experiment with this stuff during the classroom, because a lot of that stuff is handled outside. So I think the flipped classroom gives us a lot of opportunity to do this. I saw a question about preparing teachers for entrepreneurship. How do you train teachers to be entrepreneurial? I think this is one of the really difficult challenges around promoting entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, in lots of countries, I know certainly in the United States, I saw some research recently just about the amount that's expected out of teachers. It's enough in the workday to try and just get through the basic things of what you're working on, which is a challenge. So I think entrepreneurial education has to happen sort of all levels of teacher preparation. So in their initial preparation, at university, there should probably be some time being spent on how to be an entrepreneurial educator, how to think outside the box and solve problems. But I think one of the best things that we can also do is network not only teachers with each other, but network teachers with entrepreneurs. Who are some people that are working in the community with small businesses, with others, and create time for those folks to get together and share, what they are doing. And I think in almost every community there are entrepreneurial people. And unfortunately, at least in the United States, and I don't know if it's true everywhere else, we can become what we call very siloed, right? So the teachers stay with the teachers, the policy people stay with the policy people, the business people stay with the business people. How can we break down those silos to get people to collaborate with one another? Look, it may be as simple as having networking events. So if you were to host an event at the school, or if a business were to host an event there that got those people together talking to one another, what are some of the issues that you're running into? How are you solving those problems? Sort of expanding the set of options that are available to people, I think, can be a really useful exercise. But get those people in the room, talking to one another, working with one another, solving problems together, I think can be a really positive experience. Break down those silos, get people to collaborate with one another. Lots of great questions. These are coming very quickly. Yeah, starting from our classes, let students work with teachers, experiment. Yeah, this I think is all great. One of the things that's important to remember about entrepreneurship is one of the fundamental sort of dispositions of entrepreneurs is they are risk takers. So many entrepreneurs that we now know as successful failed several times before. So if we look at someone like Elon Musk, who's famous now for the Tesla automobiles and SpaceX, he helped invent PayPal. I think he had 3 or 4 businesses that failed before he made billions of dollars with PayPal. But he tried something new, he experimented, he learned from it, and he moved on. And I think oftentimes we don't do a great job with our children, with our students, helping them become more comfortable with failure. Try something new. It's okay if it doesn't work out. Learn from it, get better next time. And again, that's something I think is at the practice level within schools, but is also at the sort of policy level. In places where we have really high stakes examinations and others, it can be difficult to try and encourage students to fail, because failure is a part of learning. I think we all sort of realize that. And if we want to cultivate those dispositions of entrepreneurs, we've got to let kids take risks, fail, and learn from those things and learn to do better in the future. So creating classroom environments where students are comfortable trying new things, experimenting, and where failure is seen as a positive event, where it's, hey, look, you tried something new, it didn't work out, and that's okay. So that's something that is entirely within your control as a teacher. Now, some of these other things I do think are more at the sort of at the policy level. Yeah. Oh, I love this too. Have students go to entrepreneurship meetings, visit companies. I think that's exactly right as well. At the student level, bringing in entrepreneurs into your classroom to talk to your students, going out to those places to experience those things and to see the exciting things that are that are going on. I think it'd be really powerful experiences. I started my career as a teacher. And I would try to bring in people into my classroom, even for, just for a few minutes, 30 minutes or an hour or something every once in a while can be a really positive experience, or going out to places that are doing new, cool, and interesting things. Just all about that expanding minds and expanding opportunities and rethinking how all of that stuff works, I think can be really valuable. Oh, I see lots of people typing. This is great. Failing is a part of learning to learn. I think that's exactly right. Multiple attendees are typing. This is good. Thank you so much for everybody being kind of active and involved in this. I will say, while some of these questions are coming in, I've done a lot of writing and work on educational entrepreneurship. So if you just Google my name, so you can Google Michael McShane and Education Entrepreneurship. I've written some short articles. I've done a whole book on it, and others. So there's lots of opportunities, I think, to kind of pick up on those things. So I think that can be useful. I write about a lot of other topics too, but if you just kind of Google my name and educational entrepreneurship, I think that you might have some opportunities to at least read some kind of shorter form stuff. If you're interested in the whole book, that's great too. But the shorter form stuff is available as well. I like this. So we usually help children experimenting by themselves fail as well without hurting their self-confidence. I think that's great. Oh, I love this. Failure is a source of learning, but are raised with acceptance of failure, overprotected. Look, I'm glad to hear that's not just happening here. I think you're exactly right. We are overprotecting a lot of our kids. So my mother, for her entire career, has been an educator. And she told me something once that I think is useful for all of us, which is when children at a young age make mistakes, the consequences are cheap, right? They're inexpensive. If you make a mistake when you're a young kid, if you're taught looking, if you're caught looking at your neighbor while you're taking a test and you're 7 or 8 years old, you might get a stern talking to. And if you learn from that lesson, you'll be great. If you get caught at university doing something like that, or out in the business world making the same mistake, and you've never been allowed to make that mistake at a younger age in your life, the consequences can be very expensive. So I think that it's important to get kids comfortable with failure, to give them the opportunities to know it's not the end of the world, to learn the important life lessons. But if we overprotect our children and prevent them from ever knowing mistakes or failure, we're not going to be able to. Now, look, I don't want us to go overboard and be, aggressive towards children and pushing them. It's about creating an environment where they experiment, where it's sort of a safe place for them to experiment, but where that failure still exists, but it's put in context, right? So let's talk about, it's sort of one of those, a metacognitive task. So after students do a project, give them some time to talk about it. What went well? What went poorly? If you could do it again, what would you do? Having that processing time. I think a lot of times we want to, as teachers, as educators, we want to get on to the next thing. But building that time in to think through what happened, I think can be incredibly important. Okay. See an example here. In my school, students spent training periods in companies or facilities where they experiment and learn practice at school. I think that's great. As much as possible, if the skills that you learn in school can be tied into real world applications, and there's an opportunity for students to really put their knowledge into practice, I think you've got an incredible opportunity to really get that knowledge to sink in. They will remember what they learned in school. They will remember the experience that they had. I think sometimes if you only have one or the other, it can be a challenge to really get kids to connect with that and remember that for a long period of time. So I think that's a really great opportunity to try and create that. And again, part of this might be at the policy level. Here in the United States, it can be very difficult to get students the freedom to leave school for a certain period of time because we here in the States, you sue everybody for everything. So it can be a real legal challenge to work through. So school districts have to work with legal counsel to make it possible to do that. So look, it's not an easy thing to do. But I think it pays dividends. And so working again with community members to try and make that happen can be very important. So if failure is useful, shouldn't we reconsider the importance of low grades? I agree with that. I think we should. I think we need to. We need to think about both grades as a summative experience. So about it's trying to give an indication of how much a child learned a year, which is important and is necessary, but it's also a formative experience. So it's knowledge that what students are doing well and how they can do better. So to me, the mindset shift is not to try to move to a system where we tell every kid that they're succeeding and that they're everyone is at the top of the class. It's a way to contextualize failure. It's a way to think about learning as experimentation, to learn from that. So it's not really necessarily like an either or. So there are some people who've said, we need to get rid of grades. I don't think that's necessarily the answer, or we need to change those practices. To me, it's much more about the context in how we use those things. So great question. How do we make them accept failure? And And this is where I think the importance of modeling comes in, right? So you as a teacher can model by trying new things yourself and then taking time to process that. So you're going to change the way, let's say, you know, some ideas about a flipped classroom came up, or changing something in your pedagogy or how you teach. And then taking time afterwards to model for students, hey, this is this thing that I just tried. What went well? What went poorly? How can it be done better in the future? So if you show that you are a lifelong learner yourself, that you're a problem solver, that you're trying new things, and then sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, I think that can be incredibly powerful for students to see, oh, wow, this is a shared enterprise that we're involved in, and it's a lifelong process. That entrepreneurial mindset, identifying problems, solving them, iterating, trying again, getting better, risking things. It makes everybody better at what they do. You know, whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to work within a larger enterprise, whether you want to work in the public service, or any of those things, people who are entrepreneurial have advantages in those situations. So I think it's a great opportunity to do that. Yeah, it's about cultivating that attitude, cultivating that mindset, putting these things in context. It's not trying to shield them from failure. It's not trying to prevent that. And the best thing that you can do, I think, is that you can try and model that. Try and do it yourself. Yeah, look at this. I got a lot of respect for my pupils when I told them I was back at university. I think that's great, right? I think that's you have a great opportunity there to say, listen, learning is a lifelong process. I'm going to continue with it. Learning is fun. Learning's interesting. It helps us better understand the world around us. So we're all part of this. Yeah. And I think, look, resilience, these words, effort, praising effort, all of these things are important. Now, look, I think there is a balance that needs to be struck, in the sense that if students exert a great deal of effort and still come up with an incorrect answer, you got to be able to tell them, hey, listen, 2 + 2 is not 5, it's 4. But let's talk about the process of how you got there, and instill in that sort of drive that's saying, hey, listen, 2 + 2, you got 5. That's okay. That's all right. Look, it's actually 4. Here's why. You need to work through it. So I think that is an important piece of it, that you really got to talk about process. You've got to work through that and strike that really. And look, I will be the first to say it is a very delicate balance. It's a challenging thing to do. It's something that you're always working on and always working through. But that mindset, that attitude is incredibly important. And resilience, I think that's good. Listen, one of the things that I think is becoming increasingly clear in our modern world is just how important resilience is. Look at how quickly the world can change around us. You know, whole industries will emerge or will shutter. People are going to have to be able to be adaptable in their lives moving forward. So teaching children to be resilient and cultivating that, I think is only going to become more important, you know, as we move forward. Wow, so many questions that they're just scrolling quickly. Foster self-esteem, love it. Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, if students are not resilient, they're going to struggle in life, right? Like, if you know, it's something that we really need to think about. Those cultivating those mindsets are important. And the best way, so one of the things, you know, circling back to an earlier question, you know, there was this question about, you know, is this something that can be taught in schools? And I think this is one of those examples of how those attitudes can be cultivated, and that we can try and work on these things. Oh, great. Look, we got lots of people typing. This is great. Again, thank you all so much for being such active participants in this. We're getting lots of questions. We're getting lots of discussion. I hope that you all sort of continue to network with one another and talk to each other about these tasks, and share the things that you all are doing with one another, because I think it can be incredibly important. And too often, people look to people like me. Oh, you've written a book about this. Can you come and sort of tell us what to do? But the thing is, what's going on in your school, in your community, is unique, and it's important. One of the best things that you can do is learn from other people that are doing the same thing at the same time. So networking with one another, sharing ideas with one another, sharing examples of where you tried stuff and it didn't necessarily work out. It's all good. It's a good way to make everything to really improve the situation. All right, we have lots of people typing. Multiple attendees. See what they have to say
Oh,
here.
they probably just think that it's over almost. Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, now what about using WebTube? Yes, now you have a question. What about using these ITC tools?
Oh, this is a question. I think it may be taking a little bit more time to get over the ocean, and to me, I am saying, it's this is so wonderful that this technology that's available to connect us, to connect educators and others. That's another thing I would sort of use this technology, use this that's here is it's amazing. I still haven't had any of these new questions pop up. See, lots of people are typing.
Yes, and there is a suggestion that you should join our eTwinning group at Entrepreneurship. By eTwinning teachers, we have a group, Entrepreneurship in Education. So,
Oh, here we go.
so they invite you to join
Sure.
us.
Oh, hey, well, that's good. You should join it. I would love to join the group. That's at least I know I've met with some success today. You didn't tell me to never come back ever again. So I appreciate that. Oh, look, here we go. So many things. They all popped up at once. Um, yeah, no, Web 2.0 tools I think are super important, and I think they're only going to get better. I know they can be kind of frustrating at times, but I think over time, like the ability to do stuff like what we're doing right now, share information, and others, Google Documents, web surveys, all of that stuff can be super important. Well, thank you. Well, I'm seeing lots of thank yous. I don't know if those are being directed towards me, but if they are, I
Yes,
certainly
of
I
course.
certainly appreciate them.
Yes, of course, they are directed to you, probably. Yes, because it's almost 6 o'clock. So probably they just think that it's over, it's going to the end, which is so I really want to thank you so much. And of course, this has been recorded, so this recording will be available for the teachers. I am the moderator of this group between or entrepreneurship in education, so we have more than almost 1,600 teachers there, and so they will have this recording available for them, and so they will teach from you again. It was really very inspiring. Thanks so much.
Well,
And
wonderful. Well, look, thank you all so much. And again, if you look at my name, I know the information put here. I have email, I have everything. If you have questions, you want to collaborate or talk about things, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I may pop back in on one of these and join in and then get to be you and ask questions of whoever's sitting in my seat. But thank you all so much for being such wonderful, active participants. This is great.
yeah, and there is a challenge. Will you repeat this webinar? Will you join us again? So we
Yes,
will.
I will. Deal. I'm in. I will join again.
Great. So, yes, so we will arrange it again. Thank you so much. It was
Perfect.
really a pleasure to have you here. So you again gave us a lot of energy and yes, inspiration. And I will send you the link to our eTwinning group, Entrepreneurship in Education, and we will see how to join. What can we do together?
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Sounds great.
Yes. So we will see
Thank you.
again. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thanks.